Okay, the technical names of notes in a diatonic scale. Diatonic, I don't really want much confusion to be in these videos, so I kind of want to break down a lot of stuff. If it takes a little while, well, that's good because we're going to have less confusion down the road. So diatonic is a word that is describing the 7 harmonious notes attributed to the key or scale we are using, which these can all fundamentally be found starting from that major scale pattern and then finding the other modes from that major scale. So we just looked at the C major scale. The diatonic notes would be the notes in the C major scale. So they'd be C, D, E, F, G, A, B. The other notes outside of those notes would not be diatonic notes to C major. So when we're looking at C sharp and D sharp and any of the notes that have sharps, because remember C major doesn't have any of those are not going to be diatonic notes. So the notes outside of the diatonic notes are known as the chromatic notes, as they are the other notes that are not in the diatonic notes but are in the chromatic scale. So let's kind of understand what degrees of a scale mean. So we're looking at the C major scale, and we're going to call the first degree C, because that's the first note in the scale. The second note in the scale is D, so that's going to be the second degree. Furthermore, each next note in the scale is the next degree, leading us back to the 1 again on C, because we only have these 7 notes. So we only have these 7 degrees. So as you can see, it repeats again after 7. And on the piano, as you can see, it repeats again after 7. So what that means is that this is 1 octave up from the other C that we started on. And therefore, it still keeps the same functionality of that same C. It is just a higher pitch version. This goes for all of the other notes and scale degrees as well. So to conclude that, any octave, which means a higher or lower version of the same note, so in this case, I'm going to look at C major, and in C major, G is always the 5th scale degree of C major. So it doesn't matter if I play any of these Gs, it's still going to be the 5th scale degree. So furthermore, any G note can be played high or low, any octave, on any instrument, or sung, and it will still be the 5th scale degree, which means it will still keep the same functionality as all of the other octaves of G. So any high or low version of G, in this case of C major, is going to have that 5th scale degree functionality, no matter if you're singing it, playing on an instrument, or whatever is going on. So now I'm going to actually go over the scale degrees, and I'm not going to completely go in order. Okay, so first we have the tonic. The tonic is the first note or degree in the scale that we're using. This establishes the key that we're in, as well as the home sound of the key that we're using. So if we're in C major and we hear, that's going to tell us, okay, that's kind of like the home note of the scale that we're using. So oftentimes a song will begin with the tonic of the key it is in. And it is also very frequent for a song to end on the tonic. The tonic has an exceptionally stable sound in the key it is in. So compared to all the other notes in the scale, when you hit that C note, it stabilizes everything. And it just sounds like, okay, now we're back at home, or we're settled down, okay? This can be very useful when you want to create an ending to a song that also communicates to the listener's ears that, okay, this is the ending of the song. This can be a very pleasing experience to the listener. Next, I'm going to look at the supertonic, which is the 2nd degree of the scale. Supertonic should not be mixed up with a super version of the tonic, as a lot of people might think that it's a bigger or better version of the tonic given the word supertonic. Super is actually a Latin word which means above or after. And if we're looking at a scale, if we're looking at a note above this note or a note after the note, that's literally the nature of a supertonic. It's simply the note after or above the tonic. This next one is probably in music history the 2nd most important note function away from the tonic. So you have the tonic, which is very important for music and the history of music and our understanding of how music works. And next, probably the most important one would be the dominant, as the dominant has an ability to dominate the harmony. It also has a close relationship to the tonic, and tends to point us to the tonic, or in other words, it points us back home. Dominant function is a whole topic on itself, but just for our ears to hear what's going on here, if I start in the note C, and then I go to G, which would be the 5th scale degree, and then I go back to C, we're going to hear that in relationship to the C, the G is going to sound a little bit unsettled, and it will sound settled when we go back to the C. If you didn't quite pick up on that with your ears, no worries, because a lot of this stuff just kind of takes some time training your ear. Okay, the next one. Subdominant is the 4th degree of the scale. Sub is Latin for under, behind, or beneath, and this makes a lot of sense because the subdominant is the same distance below the tonic as the dominant is above it. So if we're going to be counting from C, and we're going to be counting down 5 notes, we land on F. But if we start on C and we count up 5 notes, then we land on G. So as you can see, the subdominant is basically a dominant counting down from the tonic, while a dominant is a dominant counting up from the tonic. Next is the leading tone. This is very important in music. This is the 7th degree of the scale. This directly points us back to the tonic or home because it is a half step away from the tonic. So if I'm in the scale of C major and I'm progressing up all these notes, the last 2 notes, if you notice, go straight from B to C. And because of that, it's a leading tone because it directly goes from one note to the other and there's not that note in the middle of it. The next thing to know is that the leading tone is also the 3rd note of our 5th degree triad. So if you look at the 5th degree triad in the context of C major, we're going to have a G major triad, which is going to consist of the notes G, B, and D. And look at the middle note, it's B. B is our leading tone. So that is also another reason why our dominant chord points us back home. Another primary reason is probably the fact that the 5th degree is in the first different note away from the fundamental in the overtone series. Moving on, we're looking at the median, the 3rd degree of the scale. We're using a lot of Latin words here. Median is a Latin word that can be translated to middle. This does not mean the middle of the scale. This means roughly the middle of the tonic and the dominant. So then we're going to move on. We're going to go to submedian, the 6th degree of the scale. So with the submedian, this is going to share the same nature as the relationship between subdominant to dominant. The submedian is the same distance below the tonic as the median is above the tonic. So if I'm looking at our tonic and I go 3 down, I get the note A. Okay, keep that in mind. But if I start in the note C and I go up 3, I go to E. And submedian being the 6th degree of the scale, I went down 3, remember, and I went to that note A. So now if I go up from C and I go up the 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, look where I land. I land on A. So if I count down 3, or if I count up 6, I have that same note. So those actually share the same functionality in the C major scale.